Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Steve Moon, your San Jose realtor. So buying a home is a huge decision. It's probably one of the biggest investments that you're going to make in your life. But let's be real, the process can be a total minefield. So today, we're going to break down a few types of homes that you may think may be a dream dream come true type of home, but could actually turn into a total nightmare. So I've seen a lot of homes over the years that I've been selling real estate. Some obviously amazing, and some that made me want to walk away right out the door as soon as I enter. So whether you're a first-time buyer or you just want another refresher, stick around. This could save you a ton of stress and a whole lot of money. So let's start with something that's easy to overlook. Location. Yeah, we all know location matters, but not always in, a good way. For example, homes that back up to busy streets or freeways or train tracks, they're going to be good deals. But trust me, constant noise gets real old real quick, and if it's going to bother you, it's going to bother future buyers as well. Resale value takes a humongous hit when your backyard sounds like a rush hour. And here's a big one that people seem to forget. Homes built on unstable hillsides. If a property doesn't have solid structural reinforcement or isn't built on bedrock, you could be in some serious trouble. I've seen, and I'm sure some of you have seen, homes literally slide off the hills after heavy rainfalls on TV. Not only is that terrifying, but insurance doesn't always cover that kind of damage. You could be on the hook for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. All right, so let's step inside. What should you be looking for on the interior? Structural issues. These are big deals. So jagged or diagonal cracks in the walls or ceilings, or horizontal cracks in foundations, these are not good. These aren't just cosmetic, they can point to something deeper in structural problems that can be very expensive and complicated to fix. Honestly, personally, if I were to see these kind of things, these types of cracks, I wouldn't go forward in buying. Also, watch out for sagging ceilings or signs that load-bearing walls have been removed without permits. So if you walk into a home and something feels a little off, trust that instinct. Especially in two-story homes, missing structural supports, where it looks like it's drooping, that can spell major problems. So now let's talk about flips. Flipped homes can be super appealing, right? New paint, shiny appliances, trendy finishes, but don't be fooled by all the dazzle. A lot of flips are rushed by investors who are basically trying to turn a quick profit. That means corners will be cut. So if you're seeing crooked cabinet doors or sloppy baseboards or mismatched finishes, it's a sign that what's behind the walls might be even much sketchier than what you see in front of you. Remember, many of these flippers need to cut costs to make greater profit. So be wary of the ones that reveal jobs that look rushed. So let me give you an example of a real life flip situation. A client and I recently were trying to put in an offer on a beautiful flip that he found. So he walked through and fell for it. All the dazzle like we were talking about. So we were going through the disclosures, and it turned out that the flip was pretty substantial. We saw the condition of the home, or at least the photos of the home, before they started. So it looked like a total down to the stud type of work. But as we were going through the disclosures, again, everything was done, with the latest trend. But when we went through the disclosures, we discovered that there was over $25,000 of Section 1 termite and dry rot damage. So think about this. They literally, supposedly, redid the whole house. But the inspectors found $25,000 worth of damage, active infestation on this property. And that's just from the non-intrusive inspection that they did. Imagine what the damage would have looked like behind the walls, behind the drywall. So literally, they didn't do any repair to the bones. They just did cosmetic upgrades. So, these are the type of things that you really have to look out for because it's too simple to get dazzled by all of the, again, the flash. And people get enticed by that until they live there for a little while and start to see that things are falling apart. So to address this obvious concern that buyers were going to have about this $25,000 worth of Section 1, their solution was to say that they would provide what's called Section 1 clearance during escrow period, meaning they would correct all this $25,000 worth of damage that they discovered during escrow. Well, that possibly resolves that portion, but what it doesn't address is the fact that this obviously rushed job, this was just the non-intrusive portions that the inspector found. If they opened up the drywalls, I'm certain there would have been much more damage that was hidden behind the drywall. It wouldn't have addressed that, right? So this is the problem with flip jobs, because by the nature of the business, you're incentivized to move quickly and get the job done in order to reduce your carrying costs, right? Because the longer you work on this project, the more it costs the sellers, because most of this stuff is probably done with borrowed private money. So be careful of these types of flips, because if you see, again, we say buy the seller and not necessarily the house. If this seller is rushing to try to make sure that they make some profit, they're not really looking out for your best interest to do everything per code or do everything right. They're just doing this to make sure they don't lose any money. That's a wrong situation to be in if you're on the buyer side. So how do you address this if you're in a flip situation? Have your agents ask questions. Were permits pulled? Who did the work? Can the seller provide receipts or contractor information? If they can't or won't, that's a red flag. Now, not all flips are bad, of course. Some are done beautifully by experienced pros who do this for a living and they know how to do things. But there are a lot of people who just saw one too many flip shows on TV and decided to get in on the game because they thought they were going to make money, and they bought an internet study course. And now you just, now they're a flipper. You just need to dig deeper to make sure you're not dealing with one of these guys. Dig deeper into the inspection, and it just became easier. And in California right now, the disclosure rules have now just changed to where home flippers have to disclose and itemize exactly what was done during their flip. This type of detailed disclosures were not required until this year. The reason for these disclosure requirements now were obviously due to many buyers being burnt by these rushed flip jobs by these unscrupulous people, right? They were dazzled by the trinkets and the colors, only to learn that the bones were left rotting inside. So let's talk about some hidden money pits. Issues that might not show up until you've already moved in and started to live your best life. First up, old plumbing, galvanized pipes. Those things rust from the inside out, and they're gonna mess with the water quality inside your home. So you'll probably have to replace them sooner rather than later. And this whole repiping of the house is a lot of work and a lot of labor involved. And same goes for outdated electrical systems, like knob and tube wiring, which we see here now in Silicon Valley once in a while. These things, they don't make anymore. They were possibly 100 years old, and they're basically there's fire hazards now. So if you still see these, big red flag. And because these things are fire hazards, upgrading them is going to be very expensive because you're going to have to rewire the whole house, right? And if you hear any types of buzzing sound from the panel, call the electrician. And those are the kind of things you probably want to stay away from. Also, don't underestimate HVAC systems. If the furnace or the AC is ancient or rusting on the outside, that's probably another $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 right there. And let's not forget the roofs, right? Especially the roofs of larger homes. Replacing those can be, depending on the size, running well into the five figures. So unless the price reflects all of these work that needs to be done, it just probably may not be worth it to move forward with these types of homes. Just avoid them. Water damage is one of the worst things that you can deal with as a home buyer or a homeowner. So a small leak under a sink, or maybe dry rot on the edges of a roof, these types of things are annoying, but they're manageable jobs that may be worth taking on, right? But black mold, let's say under the primary bathroom's sink, mold is a different story. Mold remediation is pricey, it's time consuming, and it can be a health hazard, especially for kids, elderly folks, or anybody with asthma or respiratory problems, right? Remediation is where they put on spacesuits and come in to do the work. Yeah, it's some serious work and very costly. Also, keep an eye out on flat roofs or these Eichler-style roofs. They're more prone to leaks and have shorter lifespans than slope roofs. So think about this, right? Flat roofs collect water rather than pushing them off like slope roofs. So a tiny section of a porch is one thing, but an entire flat roof, well, that's definitely something to look at closely during your inspection. How do you protect yourself from all of this type of stuff? Don't skip on inspections. I know in a hot market like here, it's tempting to waive contingencies to win the deal, but waiving your inspections, well, that can be playing with fire. So again, in places like the Bay Area, where it's customary for sellers to provide third-party inspections to buyers, it's a little bit less risky, right? But if the seller is one of those hard-headed people who refuse to do what's customary in the area, well, definitely don't skip inspections in those scenarios, especially if the house is dated, right? Because again, the propensity for potential issues is greater in those types of situations. Remember, by the seller, not necessarily the house. Depending on the home, you might also want to do a sewer scope, what we call sewer lateral, especially if there are a lot of trees around the house. Better to spend a few $100s now rather than tens of thousands of dollars later, when you learn that the main sewer is failing and you have to do this, massive work to replace all of the piping underneath the house. And this is because typical home inspections don't check the quality of the pipes and under the house. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what you're feeling comfortable with. If you're a contractor or if you're one of these super handy types, maybe some of these things aren't necessarily deal breakers. But for most people, and especially first-time home buyers, unexpected repairs can financially be devastating. And this is why having an experienced real estate agent on your side makes a huge difference. We would have seen these types of issues before and know where to dig and who to prod to get the proper responses and answers so that you can make a more informed decision on the biggest purchase of your life. Experience and knowledge matter when you have a very short time to make a big decision to either move forward or simply to back away. I hope this gave you a solid checklist of what to watch out for when you're out there shopping for your next home. So if you have any real estate horror stories, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, and maybe share with other people. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and also hit that bell so that you don't miss the next video. So thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next video.